truth be told, every champion has felt it. Every president has felt it. Every king has felt it. Every lion has felt it. Every winner has felt it. Every soldier has felt it. Every victorious person has felt it. The urge to quit.
Crossroads, life's tolls, life goes. I gotta win. W my lockdown. You can't rewind.
Hey, how are you guys doing today? This is your host, Sonia of the Remember Who You Are 222 podcast. I have my guest, Julie, here with us today. How are you doing today, Julie?
I'm doing so well and so excited and grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm definitely excited for you to be here too and to hear your story. So just to introduce a little bit of what Julie does. So she is a psychedelic facilitator specializing in psilocybin supported healing at the micro and macro level. She's helped over 300 people safely reconnect to themselves through intentional plant medicine experiences, subconscious reprogramming, and integration work. A former attorney turned facilitator, Julie is known for her grounded, joyful, and radically honest approach to transformation. Okay, so this is definitely something that's really interested me lately, but I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that are interested in it as well. So why don't you tell our listeners what's your story and what kind of got you into doing what you do now, especially going from being an attorney to now this.
Yeah, this was not on my wish list as a child. It really wasn't even on my list. I started this work about 4.5 years ago, but 5 years ago, it wasn't on my radar either. I had a pretty traditional, but also non-traditional life growing up, meaning I was always pushed toward, get an education, get a job that pays well from an education. But I was raised by a single mother because my dad died when I was really little. And on top of that, my brother has special needs. And so it was always kind of on me to be a good helper, a good little girl, to do the right thing, to do well in school. And I felt like if I didn't do all these things that people expected of me, that I wouldn't have approval. I wouldn't have acceptance. I wouldn't have love and validation. And so it pushed me toward a path that was not at all what I wanted. And once I took a step to realize, wow, this life doesn't reflect what I actually want. I don't know if I even know what I actually want. I'm not sure what I value and what's important to me. And just how out of alignment my life was, I knew something had to change. And that moment of realizing that this wasn't going to work any longer is really what started me down this path. But ultimately, psychedelics were a few more steps down the path. It wasn't a sharp right turn into this by any means.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess if you want to explain a little bit more about, I guess, how you stepped into it.
Yeah. So when I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, it was very much one foot in, 1 foot out. It also wasn't, it's taken me a long time to do things full ass. I feel like now I'm a big full asser, but for a long time I was let's just see what the water's like over here. And so I started exploring different areas of practice. I started thinking about practicing in special education law or working with survivors of human trafficking. And those areas were really rewarding, obviously, to populations that really deserve and need some help. And it's still just, at the end of the day, I'm not supposed to be a lawyer. I didn't love it. I never really loved it. I was never super passionate about it. But through that process of kind of tiptoeing in and out, I got involved with nonprofit work. And my nonprofit experience was up in LA. And so, LA is its own little ecosystem. And so the person who founded my nonprofit was also really into ayahuasca. And she was want to sit in an ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm thinking, sure, why not? Let's go. And so that was really my first big experience in psychedelics and plant medicine. And from there, it definitely opened the door to other things. I got introduced to a microdosing company that makes microdosing capsules, because I couldn't grow mushrooms. I don't want to grow mushrooms. I'm not into the packaging and that whole thing. I love the guidance piece of it, but in terms of the product, that is not who I am or what I'm about. But when I got introduced to the company, I was like, how does this work? I mean, to this day, there's not really like a comprehensive guide to microdosing out there. But I'm big on the research and I'll figure anything out. And so I dove really deep into it and I was like, hey, there's really something here. Like, and microdosing isn't just like taking an Advil, you don't just pop this thing and think, oh, okay, now my life is going to be different. It requires some work on your part, right? It's just like working out. Yeah, you can take creatine, you can take your supplements, you can take the protein powder, whatever. But like, if you don't lift the thing at the gym, like your muscles aren't going to grow. Same thing.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So I guess what my question is, what are some of the, I guess what is the kind of step by step that you started with that, and then you were able to get into you were just doing it yourself at first and then seeing how it went?
I do have a foundation in coaching. I'm a certified coach. So I got coached in things that a lot of people probably see on the internet, like NLP, hypnosis, timeline techniques. So it's amazing work. And I really loved it. And I was coaching like executive coaching, entrepreneurs, C-suite execs. And I loved that. And what I loved about my coaching certification was that it was an immersive program. So I learned the tools, but also my student, like the fellow students, we practice the tools on each other. So I was like, wow, I've done a lot of really good work on myself, but I still feel like I'm like, there's some lingering anxiety and depression. So when I originally got introduced to microdosing, my focus on the research and why I even pursued psychedelic facilitation is because a lot of information isn't, readily out there for people. But it was like, I think I could really get to the root cause of my depression and anxiety with this tool. And so originally it was honestly just for me. But, when you run an online business and I was doing coaching and promoting it through Instagram, it's really important to put yourself out there, right? And to be seen and to be honest with your audience, because that's how people are going to know whether or not they want to work with you. And so I was sharing about microdosing just because I was doing it. I wasn't like looking to get customers to support in microdosing. People were just so interested and asking. It's like, I want to work with you on this. And then I took a much more like serious scientific approach to it and thought, okay, if I'm going to get people results through this, like what needs to happen? And that's really where things catapulted. And like when I started getting really nerdy with everything and the research and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I definitely believe what got me interested in it recently is because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that like, or I don't want to say there's a lot, but I've met a few people that claim to be like guides, but they don't have a lot of experience in it and are, I would say, are doing it the wrong way. And so it's like,
girl, my biggest pet peeve are all these like people who look like me calling themselves shamans and they like wear a poncho and a big hat. And I'm like, babe, I'm appropriating other people's cultures. Like, shaman is a real indigenous practice. And although I have worked with like indigenous peoples and tribes, I know that that's not my my come from is much more scientifically backed and like research backed. I don't think one is better than the other, but I just don't call myself a shaman out of respect for a different race, like tradition, so many things.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I know people who have like gone through this whole training to become like a shaman. But yeah, as far as I could definitely see myself going the science route, because I've always learned, I've actually went through my awakening through the science route. It was like neurology, quantum physics, like all of those things were really what got me into the spiritual side, because I was a truth seeker. But I've always been interested in, at least since I've tried the psilocybin, I've always been interested in that, just because of the effect that it does have on you, and you're able to like kind of see from a higher perspective and be in that energy.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on in your brain when you take a psychedelic substance is amazing, right? And I think it's important to have both, like the science and the energy. But I also, if we're really thinking about creating like protocols and courses and tools for people to use, I think it's really important to focus on the science so that you can make sure that people get like the result they want.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And another question I have for you, since you were a lawyer, is there any like legal things that you have to put in place because of technically it's not legal right now, right?
So actually in dispensaries in California, they're opening up and a lot of them do sell microdosing capsules. That's at their own risk. But then you have
Yeah.
Oregon, you have Colorado and DC, all legalized and distributed through dispensaries.
Oh,
So
okay.
right now I like to say we're kind of like where cannabis was, 7 or so years ago, where it's getting gray. Cannabis is still gray because it's federally illegal.
Mhm.
So we are in a gray area for sure. That's another reason why I don't want to get involved with the like sale or distribution of the microdosing capsules.
Mhm.
Um, but I had my first like instance recently where I had sort of a disruptive person in a group that had to be removed. So that's one time where like being a lawyer is nice because I make sure my terms and conditions are very, locked in. But I also was reflecting like I've been doing this for so many years, and that's the first time I've had, that kind of experience. I'm pretty happy with that.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, because I have noticed that when I was looking for them on California, I was like, let me just because I'm in San Diego, but I was like, let me Google it, and a bunch actually came up on Google, and I was like, is it legal in California? But they were like, well, um, they tried to say that it was legal to like Uber it.
It's decriminalized for sure, and specifically in certain areas, like there are certain areas in LA, around San Francisco. But yeah, I mean the conversation around legalization versus decriminalization versus like criminal penalties,
Mhm.
it is all kind of like a gray area, but they're also very distinct.
Mhm. So I believe, I don't know, let me know if you kind of feel this way. I believe because a lot of the things that we can say now on the internet have been a little like there was a time where there was a lot of censorship, but I believe in with the awakening that's been happening, there's like certain frequencies now that you're on, and I don't want to say that you're just completely safe, but I do believe that, we're getting to a point where there is divine protection for certain things to get out there, and awaken more people. What
You
do you
know,
think about that?
really, I'm so happy you asked me this question because, like, probably once a month, I'll have another person who does something like kind of like what I do, who reaches out to me and says, like, how do you talk about what you do? Because Instagram shuts me down and I'm shadow banned and blah, blah, blah. And I'm always thinking, like, I don't know, girl, I've never had a problem. Like, what's going on with you? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've had, honestly, in all the years I've been doing it, maybe 2 reels get taken down. And I think one was for like a music infringement. So
Okay.
I'm not sure why they're having that problem, but I've never had any issue with
Yeah.
Instagram
With putting
censoring
it
my
out there. So that's the thing. I actually really believe that it's fear that people have in, like, if they're actually fearful, then I feel like that's when things start happening. But when you're not afraid and you're just doing it, like, I feel like that's when it's actually going to be getting out to the people it's supposed to get out to. Because I mean, I'm not afraid to talk about it or anything. I was actually recently, it's fun. That's why I say it's not a coincidence, but it's divine orchestration basically that you were on my podcast today, because I was going to start talking about psilocybin and being careful with who you do it with, because there are people that are out there trying to pose as guides when they don't have much experience with it. Um
Yeah.
so
I really like what you said about the fear conversation because I've definitely had fear come up. Like fear has been present for me, and I know that it's my responsibility to sit with my own fear and to like have a return to love, to like work through it, and to really like anchor into self-trust and connection to source, that I'm going to be okay because my heart is good and it's in the right place in all of this. It's a lot of work for sure, but I 100% agree with you that like who knows what they're saying that they can do or know how to do, and whether or not they've like actually supported someone in doing it, right? You can say anything on the internet these days, and no one's out here, I don't know, checking your sources, fact checking you, right? But it's also, if you're going to just sit in fear and you're not going to move through it and you're not going to do that important inner work, then yeah, I'm sure Meta will censor you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I do believe it's like that inner work as well. And with the work I've done, because I've worked with a sacred geometry. I've done a lot of like sacred geometry work, but it's like basically just like not necessarily. It's like looking at things differently. Like you're not looking at the negative things the same way. And so to me, nothing is really less, like there's a lot of things that have happened to me, but it's not really bad anymore. It's just integrating the basically kind of like what you said about looking at your fear, and you're basically just integrating it to where the light overtakes the dark.
You're using my favorite word, integration. I'm sure if anyone's ever heard me talk, they're like, I never need to hear her say integration ever again. But I say it all the time because it's so important, right? Like I see so many unintegrated like people walking around who think they've done all this work because they went to therapy and they understand themselves. But if you understand yourself and you're still playing out that unsupportive behavior, then you haven't integrated, and you've just like paid a lot of money to understand like why you are the way you are without actually creating a different result.
Right. And actually was something you just said just brought it popped up into my head right now, that the people I've seen that have done the mushrooms, but they didn't do the inner work. And that's why I was actually glad that I did the sacred geometry work before going into this most recent journey. But I was able to see after, communicating with this person for a few days that he was able to get himself to this higher level, but it was almost like a grandiose false sense of self.
Yeah, that is a red flag for me. Like there are certain people that I will not work with because I can tell it's all about ego. It's all about positioning themselves as better than, instead of realizing the work we're here to do as humans is to like raise and lift like the community, the collective. It's not about thinking you're Jesus.
Yeah. And that's basically what what it started to seem like afterwards. Like he was actually a friend of mine, so I didn't really realize he was like that until we did the the journey together, and it was cool. We were able to talk about a lot of the same things for a few days, but then I started seeing it come out, basically like the unintegrated ego coming out.
Oh, it sounds like that's kind of what happened with this girl in one of my groups. Yeah, it was, things started to really, the cookie started to crumble after the journey, and I realized she was this like unreliable narrator where like she would say stuff and then she would continue to talk about something, and I was just like, what do you mean? Like it was wild, the stuff that would come out. She was not a very upfront person.
Oh wow, yeah. I started to realize, because it seemed like he was doing it with women, and basically because the type of connection you receive when you're on it, like it starts to get them. I think he liked that it got women hooked on him, basically.
Yeah, I personally have an ick around men in the spirituality community. I will not date them. Like they are not for me. I find them very gross, and it is like it's predatory.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that all of them are, even though I don't know that many men in the spiritual community, but I will say I have seen a lot of like, it's like the ego does get involved.
Just you wait, girl. If they're wearing like those fluffy, those like bouncy pants, you know what I mean? Like the balloon pants or whatever, and no shoes, run.
That yes. That's funny. If they're wearing the balloon pants, that is funny.
Like those MC Hammer pants and a hat? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I definitely believe it's hard to find a man that's like has actually integrated himself with it. Because I have heard some stories about some of the men in the spiritual community that are taking advantage of people, but
At least firefighters are more upfront, you know?
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Everyone knows. Avoid.
But yeah, so well so tell me more about the because now you say you do retreats.
Yep. Yeah. Retreats are really my favorite thing that I get to do in my business because there's nothing like an in-person connection. And I also keep them really small. And one big thing that I learned from Indigenous teachers that I find to be so true and important is community. And it's that we don't need to be so obsessed with like our own pathology, and that oftentimes what you need to hear is going to be delivered to you by someone else in circle. So I say that because at every single retreat, there's like this connection that I couldn't have planned or like orchestrated or tried to make happen, where one person really needed this other person to be there, not because they knew each other, but because there's a mom who can talk to the woman who was abused and neglected by her mom and like repair some of those bonds. Like there are just these bigger like divine plans that play out at my retreats. And I love that they're small because I get to like become friends with all these women, and we really get to form like a fun little sleepover camp for the long weekend. But yeah, like in person is just it's so transformational and it's so quick. Right. Like, of course, I love the work that I get to do in my programs and over Zoom and in coaching, but there's something about condensing time and really quantum leaping onto a new timeline by being in person for a weekend that is just, it's unlike anything else. And to me, it's priceless.
Yeah, that I can understand that for sure, because I do see how being in like a group or even a small group, it like amplifies the energy basically.
Yeah.
So I definitely love that. There's actually a few retreats I've looked into doing, at least going to first, and then maybe eventually doing my own retreats, because I could see myself doing that.
Yeah, I mean, go for it. Where there's like a dream, I believe there's like something that gets to be answered, right? Like a call to be answered. There are a lot of words. It took some refinement to figure it out, but like once you get your rhythm and your groove, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot of things I've been through that, everything I went through brought me to where I am today. But I was actually in the Marine Corps for 14 years. So through that time, I did a lot of, I was a recruiter. So I got a lot of business experience that way. And then I was a leader. So I do feel like I'm meant to like lead. And then there was definitely like some planning involved. Like I used to plan ceremonies all the time for the Marine Corps. And so I'm like, man, like I know I have all the tools to be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. And that would be a really interesting like full circle moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. So but yeah, I'm interested to hear more of your story, and maybe if you want to go into more detail about maybe just some things in your life. I know people that I've had on the past have been like, they've gone more into detail about things that have happened to them in childhood. Or when did you actually, because I know you said you went through law school, you became a lawyer. But I guess when was like the moment, because I will say I'm no lawyer, but I had it's my ex-best friend, but she became a lawyer, and I could just tell that it's something she did to prove something, or for like a status type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say like I don't want to say I had my awakening in law school, but I definitely had my like closest to a mental breakdown moment in law school. It was my third year of law school. I've been dating this guy, and our relationship just took a freaking turn. It almost was like he was a Jekyll and Hyde, where he was totally someone in the beginning and then at the end got really angry. And so it's the fall. It's like, I think we broke up on Halloween or like right before Halloween. And of course, like then when I have finals, I have all these things, right? And you know that little meme where there's a dog in a cafe and the cafe's on fire? And the dog's like, I was like that dog that was smiling and the cafe was on fire. I was like, hell no. Like I thought I was going to lose it. I was hanging on by a thread. So that's when I went to therapy for the first time. And I needed someone to talk to, man. Like that was for sure true. I just sat there and sobbed like every single week. But it got to the point where, well, first of all, I realized I was codependent. I realized, you know, losing my dad, and then my mom is sober, but you know, you can be sober and still have like certain behaviors of like an addict, you know, if you haven't integrated, right? If you haven't like really healed like the part of you that was an addict. So you can be like a sober addict basically and have these negative behaviors. And that definitely was true with like my relationship with my mom. So I realized I was codependent. That was pretty helpful. I read the book Codependent No More, great book. And it was good to finally be able to talk about the fact that, like, yeah, my dad did die. That was really hard. Oh, I probably have had anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and dissociation my entire life. That makes sense. Like, look, I know what these things are. Oh, I get it. I was probably like also not very fun to be in relationship with. Like, it wasn't just that he was an angry asshole, though he was kind of an angry asshole. I also probably was like kind of a terrorist, right? So that was a moment, but it also, like, I didn't really love therapy. I felt like every single week it was, your mom messed you up. Okay, lady. Yes, I get it. Like, do you want a cookie? So what am I going to do with that? You know? And that was definitely like a breakthrough moment just to realize mental health was a thing. But it wasn't until I would say maybe like over 5 years ago that I really had like my spiritual like awakening.
Okay. And what was that like?
I definitely started with ayahuasca, right? Where I realized like, oh my goodness, like there is so much more than what we can see. And I had some really great moments with my dad who passed, right? I had some moments with a dog that had passed. There was a lot of stuff I was going through like personally in my life at that point that I was able to like connect with ayahuasca and connect with God and like really work through in those ceremonies. And then I would say like, it might sound interesting, but like my peak moment with like a spiritual awakening was I really have always liked acid as a tool for transformation, like not to go to a rave, although I have no judgment toward recreational or facilitated experiences. I think both can be beautiful, but I intentionally took acid on Lionsgate. And I wanted to like have a breakthrough in my business, but you always are getting exactly what you need, not necessarily what you want. And what I realized in that experience was like, my mom had a sister who died in the womb. The umbilical cord went around her neck. And so she was born stillborn, but her name was going to be Julie. And so what I had this huge realization around was like, I am that soul. Like I came out in a different way as my mom's daughter, but it explains a lot of why my mom and I have such a contentious relationship, where it feels more like a sister thing, where like it doesn't feel very mother-daughterly, I'll say that. And my uncle annoys the crap out of me like a brother would. Like my uncle is like, oh my God, he's my number one. Like that. And my grandparents, we were extremely close. Like they called me number one. I was their favorite grandchild. It was like I was their daughter. Right. And so I had this whole moment where I was like, oh, my life makes sense because my soul wasn't ready to come out then. Like what I'm talking about now is, I believe, my life's mission. And it would have been too soon for that to happen. But like coming out right now is the perfect time for me to be here.
Okay, that's interesting. That's what I love to hear, like the stories and stuff. And I feel like a lot of people like to hear it too. But yeah, it's crazy because I feel like I went through so much, and I know it was for a purpose now after my awakening. But it's like I went through so much from my youth all the way till my awakening that I had a lot to to purge and work through.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the reason I joined the Marine Corps was really because I didn't really feel like I had a family. I felt alone my whole life, and I mean, my mother was very emotionally and physically abusive, and so I just kind of grew up looking for it outside of my house, outside of my house, outside of myself, and finally had my breakthrough moment after a toxic relationship. I feel like it's always like the worst things that bring out those breakthroughs. But yeah, I guess, but I do want to hear more about what are some of the like success stories that your clients come, or especially after like a retreat or something. And
Yeah, so I think my favorite story is just because it's always like so intense. But there was a woman who we were connected through, I don't know, something else, right? But she was in my world and she's like, oh, I really want to get started microdosing. And it's so funny. At the time I had this program, it was like $200, right? But she's like, that's too expensive. I'm gonna get this like $100 guide or whatever. It's like, okay, babe, like see you later. So she did that and she came back and she was like, yeah, the guide wasn't that helpful. I think I need more support. So she was like, I'm going to go through your program. Awesome.
Mhm.
She went through the program. She's like, oh my God, I love this. Like, I want to come to a retreat. Beautiful. Like, I think you're great. Like, come to a retreat. And so, I was talking to her afterwards and I always like to get like a temperature check on people, like at the end, like, okay, how are we feeling now? How are you feeling then, etc. And so I asked her, like, thinking back to when we first connected, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And she said, can I say 0? And I was like, you can. And so she told me something that like I had no idea. Her dad had died from suicide. And she said, I was really thinking about doing it too. Like, I was so unhappy. I felt so overwhelmed as a mom. I knew what it would do to my kids if I did it, but I just like did not want to be here anymore. And I was so shocked because I knew this girl. I did not think that she was
Mhm.
thinking that, and that's, I think, what they say about like Robin Williams and stuff. It's like
Mhm.
they seem like they're totally fine, but they're not fine.
Mhm.
They're not doing well. And so
Yeah.
I was like stunned. I was like, didn't know what to say. And she said, but now I feel like a 7 or an 8. I was like, what? She was like,
Yeah.
yeah, like every day I feel like a 7 or an 8. I'm a much better mom. I'm more responsive to my kids. I don't snap at them. I don't yell at them. I feel more in control. Like, I just feel good now. I feel like the mom that I knew that I wanted to be, but I couldn't be.
Mhm.
And like, I was crying. It was just so intense,
Mhm.
like hearing her say that she had thought about doing that.
Yeah.
And she obviously like hadn't shared that with me before.
Mhm.
So I think that's really my favorite story because like that is a life that might not still be here,
Mhm. Yeah, that is pretty crazy because I actually personally know a couple people that have killed themselves, like in the Marine Corps, and it really was like those type of situations where you don't know. And one guy, he was on my bodybuilding team, and he would come in laughing and joking all the time. So none of us knew
Yeah.
that he was going to do that, and it was just one day he just did it, and his girlfriend found him. So it is pretty crazy how that happens, and like you can't really. But that's amazing, yeah, that you were able to help her through that before anything actually happened.
Yeah, so I think that's my favorite like story of transformation. There's a lot of good ones around. Hearing you share a little bit about your story, there was a woman who I'd been connected with for a while, and she came to my very first retreat, and I didn't know like her background, but parents were alcoholics, she was abused, and so for her, the journey was a lot about like protecting her child, like her inner child, from what happened to her from her parents, and that was, so sad to hear afterward, but was really happy that she had the space have that process and to experience that and not forget the past. Like, it's not about forgiving and letting people who shouldn't be in our lives back in our lives, but forgiveness is something you can give yourself. And you can always like reparent your inner child to feel safe, even if your like literal parents did not make you feel safe and actually made you feel scared and hurt you.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that for sure. Yeah. Um, I think, what was I going to ask you? I just had something on my mind that I was going to ask, but, oh, I don't know why I blanked.
No, it'll come back if it's supposed
to. Yeah. But yeah, so, I guess for the guests, do you have, I guess, any advice for somebody that is looking to get into microdosing, or like how should they go about looking for a facilitator?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about microdosing, you can DM me the word journey on Instagram. My name on Instagram is my name here, Julie Cyvonne, Cyvonne. And it'll just send you a quiz automatically. And the quiz goes over a lot of things that like that are important to consider, like, and there are strong things that, hey, if this is true for you, this is definitely like not something that is probably your path. But if this is true for you, it is. So it'll give you one of three answers. Like, you're a great fit, this might be for you or not for you. So that's an easy way. It takes less than a minute to take the quiz to just kind of figure out, is this even something that I should pursue? And then, in terms of a facilitator, choosing the right facilitator is super important. So if you are feeling like some type of way about someone, like if you're listening to this and you're thinking that girl is so annoying, I'm not your facilitator, right? Like, you want to feel like you like the person and you're comfortable with them, because that's going to allow you to have a better experience. So if you're listening to this and you're like, that girl is not for me, but you want to have an experience like this, you can always DM me and be like, hey, I don't know if you're my vibe, but this kind of is my vibe. I have a lot of great friends who do similar work, and I'm happy to point you in their direction.
Okay, awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Well, I do have a closing wisdom question that I usually ask everybody. And it's basically like, if you were to say that you found one truth about our divinity, what would that be?
I feel like I'm gonna get sad, but like, love is the truth. Like, love is the most important thing, and with that, life can be really hard and life can really hurt in a lot of ways. But I know the invitation is always to become more loving, right? It's never to become hard or mean or aggressive. It is always to open your heart. And, we think about like Jesus, like said, turn the other cheek. Like, that has been my biggest wisdom. I think everyone has every excuse to become a mean, cold person, because life has done everyone dirty in some way, right? But I will just keep getting more and more loving and softer, and I will let life smooth me down almost like a water and rock, and that to me is the truth. It's that we're here to be loving and kind, even and especially when it's hard.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely believe that love is the answer. And I do believe, though, that some people, for me, for the longest time, I had to learn self-love and, not allowing certain things. But there is that fine line. There's like that balance that you have to get to, because some people might have been an empath, but then went the whole opposite.
I was just talking to my little cousin last night, because she's like, I think I'm a people pleaser. And I was like, okay, we can work on this.
Yeah. Because I definitely used to be, and it wasn't to everybody. It was just like the closest people to me. Like, I had this fear of losing people. So I just, I would just allow too many things, and I just went with the flow too much to where I didn't even know what I really wanted.
Yeah.
So I really had to go through a whole like figuring myself out, what I wanted, being able to say no to people if I didn't want to do something. Like it's this whole like, yeah, integration.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely believe love though. Love is the answer. And sometimes you have to love people from afar.
Amen.
Yeah. 'Cause, my son's father did a lot of like, I would say, I don't say the N word anymore, but he was a narcissist. And I've just learned, I'm actually writing a book right now called Transcending the Narcissist, because it really is about having that energetic sovereignty.
Yep.
And I'm able to be loving and like laugh at his jokes now and be around him and my son so that my son can have a better time, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it took a lot of work to get there.
For sure. Yeah. People are going to need that book.
Yeah. That's why I was like, I need to write this, because I had found so many books on, the narcissist and find like, what they are and how to cope. It was like little things on how to deal with a narcissist, but not like I haven't seen one that's like transcending the narcissist. So that's why I was like, I need to write this book.
Exciting.
So yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's definitely gonna do some good.
Yes.
But yeah, so tell the listeners where they can find you though.
Yeah, come talk to me on Instagram. Even if you don't want to take the quiz, like if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. I love to have these conversations. Always happy to reply. Or my website is just like my name, juliecyvonne.com. You can learn more about upcoming retreats or different ways to get started in microdosing. But happy to have a conversation and answer anyone's questions.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else you want to say to the listeners.
I just thank you for tuning in. Like I totally understand that everyone only has 24 hours in the day. So the fact that you listen to this conversation just really warms my heart. And I hope that my intention is always that there was something, at least one thing that you could take away that is going to, help you enjoy life more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, we will end it there then, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.